Today, we watch in awe as modern-day explorers push beyond the limits of our planet and into the limitless depths of outer space. Centuries ago, the world's oceans presented the same challenge and fascination for mankind. Beyond the horizon was the unknown. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the world's great navigators, the Dutch, the British, the French and the Portuguese, were seriously exploring the southern oceans and bringing word of a great new continent. In 1642, Dutchman Abel Tasman, sailing east on the 42nd latitude with his ships Heemskerk and Zien, sighted a shore which he believed was part of this great Southland. He guided his ships deeper into the Southern Ocean and skirted the coastline, eventually finding a suitable anchorage where he stopped briefly and decided this would be named Van Diemen's Land. Tasman's discovery would remain undisturbed for more than 150 years, until the very early 1800s. European settlement came to the Great Southland in the wake of Captain Cook's voyage of discovery in 1770. Sydney Town was established in 1788 on the shores of the beautiful Port Jackson, a colonial outpost on the other side of the earth, which would serve as a penal colony, catering for the overflow of convicts from England's grossly overcrowded jails. In 1803, it was apparent the colony of New South Wales, as it was then known, needed to strengthen its tenuous hold on this huge continent. Explorers Bass and Flinders had proven in 1798 that Tasman's discovery was in fact an island. So the decision came to secure it with the establishment of Hobart Town on that island's southeast corner. Like Sydney, it too was sited on the shores of a magnificent deep-water port. It was also to become a penal colony, but not until 1818. The sole line of communication from Sydney and Hobart towns with Mother England was with the sailing ships. These ships would regularly undertake the perilous 6-month voyage from England to Sydney and Hobart, bringing new settlers and more convicts. Both cities were then administered from the colony of New South Wales. As the colony developed and prospered, the changes came. Sydney would be the capital of the state of New South Wales, and Hobart the premier city for the island state of Tasmania. Today, Sydney and Hobart have established their own unique identities. Yet a common bond remains through the sea and the power of sail. Just as in those early days, where sailing ships sailed the 630 nautical miles between the two ports, much smaller vessels sail the same course today. For them, it is a race, the Sydney to Hobart Classic, a contest seen as one of the world's truly great offshore tests. Since 1945, adventure-loving sailors have been meeting the challenge of the Sydney-Hobart race each year. From humble and uncertain beginnings in the post-war years when 9 ramshackle yachts manned by thrill-seekers first raced south, it has grown to where we now celebrate its golden anniversary with a fleet of around 400, among them some of the world's best. This is the story of the 50 golden years of the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, a salute to the great cities and sailors who have made it what it is today.
It's one of the world's greatest waterways, Sydney Harbour. And since the very first days of European settlement, Sydneysiders have found it a haven for recreation. For the past 50 years, one single harbour event has become a sporting tradition for the city and its sailors. It's the start of the Sydney-Hobart yacht race.
Like so many great sporting events, this one came into existence via a casual chat and a drink between two enthusiastic sailors. The late Jack Earl, a marine artist of international repute, was considering a family cruise to Tasmania for Christmas 1945. One day, while anchored in a bay on the harbour, he spotted the Tasmanian yacht Saltaire, owned by Bert Walker. He rowed across and asked Walker if he could check his charts of the Tasmanian coast.
He suggested that he'd like to come along too and make a company cruise of it, you know, and I thought, well, why not, you know, it was fine. So, and then Peter Luke heard about it, and Peter was a great friend of mine, a great sailor too. And he said he'd like to join us, so there was 3 of us going to sail down there. And then he met Illingworth, and Illingworth said, well, I think Peter said, why don't you come in the race? And he said, why don't you make a race of it, you know? And that's how it started off.
Their chosen course would take them over 630 nautical miles and encompass some of the most challenging waters known to sailors. Waters where, in an instant, a wafting breeze can be replaced by a full-blown gale, and gentle swells can become liquid mountains, their foaming crests being an avalanche capable of engulfing small yachts. But just as it can be tough, it can feature captivating calms. And when the yachts are close to shore, the crews can sample some of the world's most beautiful coastal scenery. The course map looks this way. On leaving Sydney Harbour and turning south, the yachts are in the Tasman Sea. They progress down the New South Wales coast to the always moody waters of Bass Strait, then on down the Tasmanian east coast. At Tasman Island, they turn to the west and head for the Derwent River. Once in the river, it's an 11 nautical mile run home to Hobart. It's a course that has always tested the sailing skills and stamina of sailors. Crews race around the clocks for between 3 and 5 days, getting fitful moments of sleep when and where possible. The rough weather can be boat-busting and body-breaking, the calms mind-bending. To complete the course is commendable. To win the race is an outstanding sporting achievement. Back in 1945, the spirit of adventure the Sydney Hobart race presented was the perfect panacea for a war-weary Australia. Finally, men were putting to sea on small ships for the fun of it and not to defend the nation's shores. The inaugural race's impact on the community was reflected in this historic newsreel telling the story of that very first race.
Wayfarers all, as some of the 9 seagoing yachts prepare for their 630-mile race from Sydney to Hobart. At the invitation of the organisers, naval officers check the equipment of each vessel to ensure they can stand up to the rigours of a strenuous voyage. The Ambermurl, 34-foot Bermudan cutter and her crew in last-minute preparations. Captain Illingworth is one of the prime movers in the Cruising Yacht Club which organised the race. He supervises the loading of supplies in his 35-foot cutter, Rani. Veteran skipper Walker and his son head the crew of the 44-foot Bermudan ketch, Saltaire, which they built. Mr. Walker uses a gauge to test the tautness of rigging wire. A Tasmanian entrant, Winston Churchill, is a 51-foot cutter, as sturdy as its name. Skipper Coverdale broke his arm on the way up. Biggest boat in the race, the schooner Mistral goes down to Manly to the post and the field lines up for the start. The race can take anything from 4 days to a month, so it's an exciting moment as they turn their bowsprits to the heads and make for the open sea. They clear Port Jackson. Next stop, Hobart. Today, it's plain sailing. But tomorrow, a southerly may buffet timbers and flay the sails. But the stout little ships sail on, man-made beauty matching the wind-etched lines of wave and sky. Ship to ship presents moving pictures of memorable grace, a canvas painted in white, green and blue, a scene that can never fail to charm in any sea-girt land or among any peoples who go down to the sea in ships.
Remember the happy crew in the cockpit of Winston Churchill in the newsreel? Well, here are 2 of them, Max Crease and Keith Wilson, both now in their 80s. We brought them together in Hobart for the first time in 50 years, just for this golden anniversary story.
I reckon we raced more going up than we did
That's right.
coming back, didn't we?
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned, it was only a cruise back to Hobart.
See, there was no running. They told Perth there was no running sails, or, you know, spinnakers around, and then he wouldn't take one. So when we got up there, we found that all these other boats were going to use spinnakers and light sails. And all we had was a spinnaker was the...
15-ounce head sail. And to get it on and off, we used to have to lash the spinnaker pole to the anchor winch. Otherwise, you know, she'd lifted us out of the boat.
In reality, England's Captain Illingworth was the only true racing yachtsman among the 9 yacht owners contesting that 1945 race, and it showed. Unbeknown to his rivals, he pressed on into the teeth of a howling southerly gale, which hit the fleet the second day out. The others either took shelter or stopped and rode out the storm. Some say one crew went ashore and watched a movie. With his yacht Rani not being sighted for 4 days, the headlines told how the worst was feared. Jack Earl, who raced the stout yacht Kathleen, described how the competitors felt.
Given him away, and we'd been so sorry that he's such a nice bloke and so was crewing aboard him, we'd miss him too, you know, and all this stuff. And then we found out he was already in there, so we started to sail again.
An RAAF search plane had brought the news Rani was still afloat, spotted in Storm Bay, heading for Hobart at the head of the fleet. Almost 50 years on, we asked the race's founding father if he could ever have imagined it being what it is today.
No way, how could you? No. You couldn't imagine the boats would be developed to such an extent as they are today.
As they say in the classics, you've come a long way, baby. Here is the start of the 50th Sydney Hobart Classic.
And back on Sydney Harbour, we're just a minute away from the start of the veterans, the over 30s, in this 1994 Kodak Gold Sydney Hobart. And there we saw sail number 27, Winston Churchill, one of the original starters. Mark Mothersdale from the Ocean Racing Club of Australia, built in 1943. And Percy Coverdale, the original owner, had to seek official permission from Winston Churchill to name the boat in his honour of.
Well, look at the fleet coming in here, all the older boats coming down to the start line now. The gun's ready, there it goes now. They're away now in the veteran and vintage division. We've already got a spinnaker up there in the middle of the fleet, and it could well be Cannon Maris, Ian Kiernan's boat. But HMAS Fremantle was our start boat, and the man on board organising the start there was Trigg Halverson. So they're away now, the older boats. We'll see them move down amongst the fleet here. We've got Sir James Hardy's Nerida and Utica, the oldest boat in the fleet. And they're lining up there now very nicely, and Fidelis already is out in front.
Yes, well, that's not surprising. She took line honours in 1966. She's been purchased by an Australian syndicate. After a 28-year absence, she's back sailing in the Sydney Hobart. Coming up now to the over 20 start.
So these are the 20-year veterans, and in this fleet some wonderful old boats. One of them being Love and War, Peter Kurtz's yacht. She won the race twice, and a very, very competitive yacht. We can see we've got a bigger fleet this time around for this second start. And the big towering sail there in the middle of them all is Ondine 2, the American ketch. And she's out here. She's done the Hobart race quite a few times, and coming back to be part of this 50th Hobart race. So looking very good, close to the start now, getting into about 1 minute 12 seconds to go. There's Hammer of Queensland with those blue sails on. 1 minute to go to the start, getting very close. We're on the maxi boat line. There's Tasmania there, and here's Exile, the pea green hull, and she is coming up for a very, very good start the way it's looking right now. Just luffing up into the breeze there, losing a bit of speed, don't want to get too close to the line. Looks like they're going to go for the top end of the line. They're fighting, oh no, they're going to go right round and have another go at it. Loop around. They've dug themselves a bit of a hole here to get themselves into the starting area. With a blue sail on the right of her was Freight Train, another one of the big old boats. C1 is Brindabella, looking very good where she's positioned. And there it is, we're away, the 50th anniversary Kodak Gold Sydney Hobart race, and it looks like Tasmania's starting at the top end of the line, a smaller yacht right in front of her, and Exiles actually in doing their little loop have been a little conservative there. And look at that, Spinnaker and Spinnaker Staysail already up on Tasmania, and Longabarda right behind her with the yellow and white Spinnaker. That's Conjeri there with the big red ball in the middle of her Spinnaker. On the right of her is Sorcery. And both well placed, and look at that massive sail in the background. The other two starting lines, really a spectacular scene. We can see the jibing situation there now. We've got Tasmania's jibe, that's Broomstick there, and Epsom Broomstick, and a 21.3 metre boat. Now, if Broomstick gets hard running conditions, downwind conditions, she will be very hard to beat to Hobart.
We're now on board Kodak Express, and there's Animal Farm with the black spinnaker. Kodak Express well placed up towards the front of these bigger boats and around the middle of the fleet at the moment.
Now here we come into the rounding mark, there it is, and Hammer of Queensland has got right of way. Spinnaker coming down, they've dropped the spinnaker now they've got to get that out of the water or they'll go prawning, and that'll slow them down something awful. But certainly Hammer of Queensland leading at the moment. Now Brindabella will have to get her spinnaker down shortly as well. So we've got a bit of a problem there trying to get that spinnaker down on Hammer of Queensland. They've got the inside running now. The spinnaker going up on the deck. There it is, coming down. They've got a bit of a mix-up there with the headsail as well, but they've done extremely well to be where they are. It looks like they're going to jibe around the mark now. There they go, around the mark. Tasmania will be second, and Brindabella will be third. Now, Brindabella's in an absolute mess. You can just see on the left there, headsail half up, spinnaker half down, trying to get a little bit greedy around that mark. Now, Tasmania and Hammer of Queensland, you see the headsail hasn't come on Brindabella's flapping there, and these other two yachts will go well. Tasmania did a beautiful job. Now, look at this, you've got yachts going from left to right and yachts from right to left. It is just a mess at the moment as they try to get around these marks and get out. Now, these are yachts going back that have missed the mark and trying to get back into the harbour and get around this mark.
Let's go down onto China Bear. Mr. Graham, can you tell us what's been going on?
Oh, Bob, it's been fairly exciting out here so far.
It's a little bit hectic there at the moment.
Well, we've just got around the inner mark. We actually had to, we missed it. We got squeezed out and we had to do a 360 go back around and find another hole. We managed to do that. Andrew Clubb's done a terrific job on the wheel here.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to...
There are boats touching there at the moment trying to get round this mark.
We're watching collisions here everywhere, right near where you are at the moment, going around the mark. We've got one yacht actually T-boning on the right of the screen, so there's plenty of mayhem and carnage behind you there at the moment.
Oh, Bob, it was exciting getting into it, and we're just real pleased to get out of it.
But there is Brindabella chasing Tasmania very hard as they're now beating south in this 1994 Kodak Gold anniversary race.
What a spectacular start to the race, and wasn't it wonderful to see all those old yachts lining up alongside the very latest and greatest. Now behind me is the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, home to the race since its inception. Recently the club acquired a magnificent collection of half models representing every winner of the race since 1945. That collection gives us a unique insight into the evolution of ocean racing yacht design in Australia. The models were handcrafted in timber by yachtsman and boat builder Tom Stevenson. They're at a 25:1 scale, so their size differs quite dramatically. I must point out here it's not necessarily the yacht that gets to Hobart first that is the actual winner. The first yacht home takes line honours, and usually the bigger the yacht, the faster it is. The yacht which collects the bulk of the trophies is the winner on handicap, that handicap being based on size, shape and sail area of the yacht. Generally, the smaller the yacht, the better the handicap. The collection starts here with Rani, of course, the 1945 winner, a wholesome little yacht with a long keel and relatively full underbody. The yachts of this era were essentially for cruising. It wasn't until 1954 when the famous brothers Trigg and Magnus Halvorsen came up with their rapid little racer Solveig that performance-oriented yachts began to appear. The Halvorsen influence on the race was strong right through to the early 60s. That was when this yacht, their powerful sloop Freya, came along and won the race on 3 consecutive occasions, 1963, 64 and 65. An absolutely remarkable achievement. The next dramatic change came in 1976 with Piccolo. She won and started the era of the skiff-type yacht, typified by a fat, shallow hull featuring an exceptionally small keel. The concept was fast. It was like the introduction of the turbocharger to yachts. While there have been some maxi winners like Kealoha in 1977 and Sovereign 10 years later, the skiff designs have since dominated the winners list, as is seen right through to the 1993 winner, Cuckoo's Nest.
This evolution has not come only with the style of the hulls. Just as we have gone from biplanes to big Boeings in aviation, we have progressed in offshore racing. Sails have gone from heavy canvas to ultra-lightweight Kevlar. Hull construction has gone from massive timber planking to space-age carbon fibre, and masts have gone from something akin to tree trunks to ultra-slim aluminium extrusions. Those early yachts had no winches. Today, sails are controlled using highly efficient systems, and back in the 40s, radios and safety equipment were all but non-existent. Today, they are compulsory. One of the greatest offshore sailors to ever contest the race is Hobart's Jock Muir, a man now into his 80s. His rough weather sailing skills are legendary, and his talents as a yacht designer and builder exceptional. He designed and built Westward as a fishing cruiser, yet she went out and won the 1947 and 48 races. Muir reflects on those early days.
Well, I was mainly involved because the Cruising Yacht Club used to refer to it as a cruising club. And in the Westward, she is designed as a fishing cruiser with a small fish wheel. But she performed so well, particularly in bad weather, and I did too, that was the start of it. So we had two successive wins, and then we started to drop back a bit.
For another veteran Hobart yachtsman, Jon Bennet, the golden anniversary race will be his 34th. He says the sailors of those early years were much better.
I think the older sailors were better. They had to survive with much less equipment. I owe a great debt to Jock Muir, who taught me a lot. We were first over the line in Jock Muir's Waltzing Matilda, and we didn't have a winch on deck. The spinnaker was sheeted through a big block that I shackled on the end of the main boom and 3 turns round the bar. And in today's language, I've had a crew member say to me, he didn't last long, I might add, "Oh, winch is broken, we'll have to retire." I told him pretty smartly, we were first over the line without a winch on board.
Along its historical course, the Hobart race has grown in stature both with competitors and the public to a position today where it is one of the world's 3 classic ocean races, the others being the Fastnet race out of England and the Newport Bermuda race starting in America. Today, the Hobart is a sporting and media extravaganza with the latest in satellite communications bringing every dramatic moment to television and newspapers. But in the early days, the absence of communications with the yachts from the time they left Sydney until they were spotted approaching Hobart placed considerable pressure on headline-hungry newspaper editors. They wanted the latest progress reports. Aerial observations and coast watches were their only hope. Enter the 1947 race and aspiring young Sydney reporter Frank McNulty. Through ingenuity and a determination for that ever-elusive scoop, he became the first person to provide a race report from a competing yacht in a very novel fashion.
So on the race day, race start day, the man comes down with a cage of pigeons, 3 of them, and puts them aboard. We did the best we could to prop the cage up so it wouldn't tumble over when we got out the heads. And we'd worked out a very elemental code that could be put on a piece, on a cigarette paper, terribly tiny. The race started, and the following morning, probably almost noon, began the task of getting the pigeons to play their role in the game. They were a very sorrowful looking lot. Anyway, we got the first one out. One crew member held him upside down so I could get towards the legs. And he's sort of rolling, the crew member's rolling with the yacht, and I'm rolling but not quite in sync with him. The poor little pigeon's peddling the air with its 2 legs. I can tell you it was quite a caper, but we did get the cigarette paper fastened to its leg. And then the pigeon up, we take him up on deck, put him down, say, you know, go, now it's your turn, you fly home with that. he wouldn't move. He was sort of staggering around doing a drunken sailor's hornpipe. So finally I got him on the palms of my hands and I was swinging my forearms up and down and up a bit harder each time. He took off, but flooded only about 4 feet and came to rest on the deck. So it began all over again. We got him back and finally got away. We then began launching the other 2 and went through more or less the same set of problems. But all 3 did take off. 1 got back to its base or its loft with the message, which gave the newspaper, the Sunday Sun, an exclusive on developments in the race to that point in time.
In that same era, navigation techniques were as basic as the communications, primarily dead reckoning with occasional confirmation coming via a sextant sight. Bob Bull was another sailor of note back in the 40s. He told the tale of what was literally the dog watch.
Well, we had a couple of crew members that were flat earthers, and I think they believed that if we missed Tasmania, we'd fall over the edge. I'm quite sure old Seppy Stevens believed that. And Ted Bloor was a bit the same, you know. We used to use this method of navigation that's known as dog barking. At night you came in towards the coast until you could hear the dogs bark and then put it back out to sea again.
Such was the media and public interest in those early races that its future was assured. The headlines left no doubt it would continue as an annual event. For the people of Sydney, the start of the race each Boxing Day had become a sporting ritual. Tens of thousands packed onto spectator craft and lined the shores to farewell the death-defying sporting heroes and their small yachts. The reception in Hobart, where the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania was the host club, was equally enthusiastic. The dawning of the second half of this century saw the Sydney-Hobart Classic 6 years old and 16 yachts lining up for the start. Over the next 10 years, the race began setting safety and communication standards which would be recognised as the best in the world. As early as 1951, communications were such that the yacht Kurrawa escorted the fleet in the role of mothership. Unfortunately, she had to abandon her duties off St Helens on Tasmania's northeast coast when owner Frank Livingston fell ill. He had to put ashore in a small boat for hospital treatment. The first film story of the race also came in 1951.
They're off. It's a festival of sunshine and water as the starter's gun sends 14 ocean yachts racing down Sydney Harbour, hell-bent for Hobart, Tasmania, 640 miles away as the Seahawk flies. It's also history in the making. For when the race is over, 3 of the yachts will have broken the record for the long and arduous course. The foreshores are crammed with spectators. Many here couldn't tell a rudder from a boom, but even the landlubber gets a kick out of the start of the big ocean race. First to clear Sydney heads is Struan Marie, 35 feet long and carrying a crew of 6. This is her first long race, but experts like her chances. Skipper Tom Williamson has reason to look pleased. Most ocean races are lightly built nowadays. It doesn't take much wind to keep them moving at a good pace. The crews welcome the easygoing, which gives them a chance to relax in the sunshine, listening to the chuckle of rushing water against the hull. Someone remembers a good joke and shares it with his mates. Someone else caps it with another. What if the jokes do get a bit blue at times? There are no ladies present, and a salty yarn is at its best when told in the salty freedom of the cockpit. At nightfall, the leaders are 100 miles south of Sydney, and the yacht's position are broadcast to the mainland from the radio room of the mothership Kurrawa.
Kurrawa calling Sydney radio, Kurrawa calling Sydney radio, and 2SM. Come in, Sydney. Over.
Come in, Kurrawa. Come in, Kurrawa. Come in, Kurrawa.
And this is the position of the yachts at 8 p.m. As they get out towards the 100-fathom line, Lass of Lass got his spinnaker up very smartly and has taken the lead from Fortuna. Just behind Fortuna is Margaret Rintoul.
Morning brings little wind, but this calm is deceptive, and weather forecasts warn of an approaching storm. Wind at last, shouts the skipper to his crew. Brother, you'll be sorry. Hang on to that tiller, skipper. Bass Strait is no place to be caught with your mast down. The 40-knot southwesterly gale is putting too much strain on Wayfarer's big mainsail, so down it comes, and the crew tuck in a reef to reduce its area. The yachts are really getting a drubbing now. Remember that old saying, those who go to sea for pleasure would go to hell for pastime? Well, this is how it was born. The crew of the schooner Irene find time to toss a fishing line overboard. A voracious barracuda takes the bait and is hauled on deck to be added to the larder. Meanwhile, there's feverish activity at St. Helens, a small port of northeast Tasmania, and so an aircraft piloted by Aero Club instructor Lloyd Jones flies out to search for the yachts.
Flying over St. Helens now. Here are the racing yachts. First one I can see is Solvay. The schooner Pavana is in front of her, and further out to sea is a yacht that looks like Lahara. Yes, it is Lahara. Lassalas racing along, followed by Struan Marie standing closer in.
By evening, most of the yachts have reached the Tasmanian coast. It's still anybody's race, and the helmsmen grow tense as they maneuver their craft to get every available ounce of wind into the sails. Hobart is only a few miles away on the 5th morning of the race, and the men perform all tasks at the double, taking turns to eat their breakfast. At 5 a.m. the leaders are passing Cape Royal, and Lloyd Jones flies out to report their position.
Rintoul in the distance, entering the Derwent River. Flying over Struan Marie now, there are other yachts all around her. There's Lassalas, and close astern Fortuna moving well.
News of Margaret Rintoul's arrival has reached Hobart, and a big crowd gathers to cheer her in. Bang goes the judge's gun, and Margaret Rintoul is not only first home, but has also clipped an hour and a half off the course record. While the yawl sails are dropped and furled, watchers report 2 cutters coming in. The first turns out to be Lassalas, the second one is Struan Marie. She is third across the line, also beating the old course record, and she looks like winning the cup. Not bad for a 35-footer sailing her first big race. By late afternoon, all doubts are dispelled. Struan Marie is acclaimed the winner, and the crews get together to discuss the race and the celebrations that await them. For this is New Year's Eve, and Hobart Town is famed for its hospitality. Aboard Struan Marie, the little cabin is filled to overflowing as guests crowd in to toast the winners and join them in a rousing chorus of sea shanties. Now that the race is over, you may wonder what it's all about. What is the prize for which these ocean wallopers so willingly face the hardships and perils of the open sea? Well, here it is, the George Adams Silver Cup, one of yachting's richest trophies. But the cup is only a symbol. The real prize is adventure, and a chance to test one's fighting spirit against that of other men who love the sea.
The Tasmanian Government Film Unit's award-winning production Hard to Windward was distributed overseas and played a major role in attracting international entries to future Sydney-Hobart events.
Final check and their ration of rum. The city, too, waking abruptly from its Christmas sleep, pours forth eager crowds and spills them round the shores. There's an air of excitement about this festive Boxing Day as they wait for the yachts to move out onto the harbour. Sweethearts and families may not see their men back in port for several weeks. It can be an anxious wait. Like a skimming gull, an aircraft drops low to spy on the ferries circling the edge. Reaching across the water, out of the wooded shores, the spectators come in their steamers, workboats, and little tin tub, to mingle in mid-morning sunlight with the strong, sleek hulls of the ocean racers. Landlubbers gaze from shore with long eyes, watching competing yachts and spectator craft cross and recross and merge together, until someone misjudges. Ripe seafaring language gives way to anxious thoughts, but help is near and there's no stopping. The gun is only seconds away, and all eyes converge on the starting line. 5 seconds to go. 4, 3, 2, 1. And over the line, tall ships and small ships all in together, schooners and ketchers, and cutters and sloops, they slide seaward in a flow of white canvas. South head to starboard and Sydney astern, the tall ships emerge in scattered file for their first taste of what is to come. They sail through brief sunshine, when eating on deck is a rich delight, and when a tune at dusk is a companionable thing and passes the time away.
Hobart radio to Kurrawa. Roger, your position. Here's a gale warning. A deep depression centred 100 miles south of Hobart, causing strong to gale force winds over southern waters.
The cry that sends a shiver down every man's back. With the ship luffed up to the wind and the boom sheeted hard in, all hands make speed to shorten sail and tuck in a good strong reef. One by one, the Ocean and Storm Bay give up their ships as they pass by the Iron Pot Light into the River Derwent and into the sight of the man on watch. And come at last to the quiet waters of the harbour, where the city of Hobart, spread under the foothills of Mount Wellington, waits, ready to acclaim the first across the line. It's the end of a long, hard slog, and a victorious one. But to the men who sail in the Sydney-Hobart yacht race, winning is not so important. It's the comradeship, an affinity with sea and wind, and some quality that draws them out to pit their skill and lives against the forces of nature. A quality that seems common to all men who challenge the sea in ships.
Come 1957, and it was then mandatory for every yacht to carry a two-way radio and report its position. During the same period, there was a progressive introduction of new safety standards, including the carrying of life jackets and the fitting of a safety fence, or lifelines, around the perimeter of the deck. Some of the names now seen as being synonymous with the development of ocean racing in Australia were also emerging in this era. There were the Halverson brothers, who, after missing the victory of their yacht Solveig due to illness in 1954, tasted their first race success in 1957 with an Etra 5. Two other brothers, Frank and John Livingston, were forever prominent with their big line honours boat Kurrawa 4, and the famous Vic Meyer solo combination also emerged. Modern-day sailors often look back on this era with an element of awe, impressed by the grit of the sailors of yesteryear who had nothing like the sails, equipment, navigational aids or clothing we take for granted when racing today. Throughout the history of this race, masses of spectators have turned Sydney Harbour into one enormous natural amphitheatre for the start each Boxing Day. There has always been a wonderful carnival atmosphere prevailing as cheering crowds crammed aboard craft large and small salute the adventurous sailors. On shore, every vantage point is packed with enthusiastic fans. It has grown to a situation today where around 300,000 people farewell the fleet each year, making it one of Australia's biggest sporting spectacles. At the same time, a huge national and international television audience follows the race from the comfort of home. Much to the delight of competing sailors, the people of Hobart still generate an equally impressive welcome when the yachts arrive at the finish line, right at the edge of the city. Like Sydney, Hobart's enthusiasm for the race was also there from the outset. Back in 1945, 5,000 people were out at 5 a.m. to welcome Captain Illingworth and Rani. To this day, no matter the hour, thousands upon thousands of enthusiastic race followers line the Derwent River and the docks to welcome the heroes of Hobart. It has become a tradition, and it extends even to the smallest yachts. For the competitors, Hobart is a welcome haven after their incessant battle with the elements over the preceding days. Race-weary as they might be, though, they always have the energy to celebrate their arrival in Hobart. For some fortunate crews, there has always been a post-Hobart race bonus, the cruise home along Tasmania's beautiful east coast, where some of the most picturesque parts of Australia are to be found. It was inevitable the word of the Sydney-Hobart Classic would spread internationally, but it wasn't until 1962 that it really hit the world stage. That was when the young New York shipping millionaire Huey Long arrived in Sydney with his stunning-looking and highly successful offshore racer Ondine. The locals thought this lightweight aluminium yacht wouldn't cope with the tough demands of the Hobart race, and for the majority of these 630 nautical miles it appeared that way. The big schooner Astor led approaching the Derwent. A grandstand finish followed.
The finish up the Derwent has spectators on their toes as Ondine leads Astor by less than 1 minute. Ondine beats Astor by 1 minute. Solo finished 45 minutes later. The other yachts are becalmed and fog-bound off Tasman Light.
While Ondine secured line honours and lowered the 11-year-old course record time to just under 3 days and 4 hours, Vic Meyer's solo saved the day for Australia, carrying the colours to victory on handicap and winning the major trophy, the Tattersalls Cup. Astor was more fortunate the following 2 years, taking line honours in both races. But her effort then was completely overshadowed by the Halverson brothers and their amazing yacht Freya. She won in 63, 64 and 65, only the second yacht in the history of world offshore racing to achieve such a feat. The 60s also saw the Kiwis come onto the scene. It started in 1966 when the sleek and slippery sloop Fidelis dumbfounded everyone, except its crew, and took line honours. 1 year later, when the Southern Cross Cup International Team Series was created in conjunction with the Hobart race, the Kiwis completed the job when Chris Bouzade's Rainbow 2 won the race. The international flavour of the race was confirmed over the next 2 years. In 1968, the year we saw the first colour film race report, there were 13 overseas yachts competing. However, it was one yacht, Huey Long's spanking new Ondine 2, that held all the interest in the lead-up. The big blue boat was dismasted in the Indian Ocean en route to Sydney and appeared certain to miss the race. But a determined Long stunned everyone by air freighting a huge new aluminium section in from Germany and stepping it only hours before the start. Ondine 2 not only made the start, she cleared out and took line honours. The historic 25th Sydney-Hobart race in 1969 was laden with interest. The British were out in strength, including future Prime Minister Edward Heath with his yacht Morning Cloud. Countryman Sir Max Aitken was also present with his big boat Crusade. There was also the exciting new Australian yacht Apollo, designed by Bob Miller, the man who would, in later years, adopt the name Ben Lexon and create the America's Cup winner Australia 2. Sid Fisher, today an ocean racing legend, was the emerging local star and race favourite that year with his magnificent new yacht Ragamuffin. And on top of all that, there was a record fleet of 79. Ironically, just like the first race, it was a British benefit. Crusade collected the line honours trophy while Ted Heath's overall win delivered the ultimate prize and gave him a rocket-like ride up the popularity polls back home. Heath, now Sir Edward, is just one of many famous people who have been part of the history of the Hobart race. That list also includes media men like Rupert Murdoch with his yacht Eilina and America's Ted Turner, who took line and handicap honours with American Eagle in 1972. America's Cup winner Alan Bond began his long association with the race in 1969 with Apollo and ended with the Big Maxi drumbeat in 1989. The race has also seen some very memorable moments, none more so than the 1982 and 83 finishes. In 1982, Apollo entered the Derwent River, just 11 nautical miles from the finish, with a 1.5 nautical mile advantage over Bob Bell's Maxi Condor of Bermuda. The greatest finish ever was to follow, as this report reveals.
With 3 kilometres to go, Apollo had drawn level but could not break through the wind shadow created by Condor's towering mast. Both crews worked frantically to catch every breath of the light sea breeze. Meanwhile, the wind was filling in from behind, and Helsel 2, Vengeance and Rampant 2 were all in the river and gaining on the leaders. With just 100 metres to go, the wind changed direction and Condor's spinnaker wrapped around her rigging. Apollo crept up alongside and it appeared certain she would take the lead. But the wind changed yet again and Condor's crew made desperate moves to stay ahead. It worked.
There's the gun and the sirens and the hooters, and from the reaction of the Condor crew, they've won it by a canvas, the narrowest margin possible.
The following year, Bell was back, this time with his new Maxi Condor, and again he was in the thick of the action. This was the news report.
The race exploded into controversy over this incident. Condor crashes into a submerged rock while trying to pass inshore of Nirvana, just 10 kilometres from the finish line. Nirvana miraculously escapes, her helmsman frantically turning the wheel, trying to avoid the rock. But then Condor's boom hits Nirvana's radio aerial at the stern and breaks it off. Amid shouts from both crews, protest flags go up. Nirvana went on unscathed, while Condor's crew tried desperately to free the yacht. They succeeded, but could not make up the lost ground. Nirvana took line honours by just 2 minutes 16 seconds over the rapidly closing Condor. Nirvana's owner, Marvin Green, and Condor's Bob Bell greeted each other coolly at the dock. Bell was sure what happened.
To that, they deliberately ran us aground.
Green wasn't keen to comment.
What was the
I don't think I
situation?
should talk about it, because it is a protest.
But Condor's helmsman, Ted Turner, was also certain what happened.
Well, we were ahead of them. We had just passed them. They passed us in the Derwent, and then we were in the act of passing them when they drove us into the rock.
The end result? Nirvana disqualified. There have been some other penalties of note in the history of the race. In 1953, Jock Muir's Wild Wave was stripped of line and handicap honours following a collision at the start. More recently, in 1985, Peter Kurt's yacht Drake's Prayer was penalised out of first place because of a trivial start line incident. Then in 1990, just before sponsorship on sails was completely kosher, English yacht Rothmans was stripped of the Line Honours trophy because it was spotted flying this spinnaker off the Tasmanian coast. Now back to the good times, and being a classic offshore test, it has attracted some of the world's best boats. Since Rani took 6 days, 14 hours and 22 minutes to complete the 630 nautical miles back in 1945, the time for the distance has been lowered at somewhat regular intervals. In 1973, the yacht they called the Flying Footpath, the concrete-hulled Helsel, lowered the record to 3 days, 1 hour. In 1975, American Jim Kilroy's Maxi Kealoha 3 arrived on the scene and left an indelible mark on the race. After charging all the way to Hobart before strong following winds, she demolished the record, crossing the line in Hobart just 2 days, 14 hours, 36 minutes after leaving Sydney. That alone was a remarkable achievement, but the fact that this record has stood the test of time and was still intact as we went into the 50th anniversary race 19 years later shows just how great a performance it was. And as if to cap off that effort, Kealoha 3 came back to Sydney in 1977 and won the race on handicap. She staged an amazing duel with another American Maxi, Windward Passage, over the entire course. The pair made an impressive sight as they sailed south with literally everything possible set. But a southerly buster put paid to any hopes they held of a record time. Over the 10 years from 1975 to 85, the Hobart fleet, especially each alternate Southern Cross Cup year, saw a dramatic increase in size, culminating in 179 yachts lining up in 1985. It was a chaotic start from one line which was limited in length by the narrowness of the harbour. It was then believed that the only safe alternative in future years would be to start the race outside the harbour, until the unique concept of using two starting lines surfaced. The lines were set 400 metres apart. The big boats started from the front, the smaller yachts from the rear. They then went around separate marks at the heads before turning south, that way ensuring they sailed the same distance to Hobart. The two-line system was first used in 1986 and has been used with success ever since. The development of the skiff-like racing yachts in the late 70s, which followed Piccolo's historic win in 1976, brought great controversy. While designers decided that the lighter the yacht, the faster it was, race organisers questioned the structural integrity and stability of hulls. Keels became incredibly small as crew weight was used as ballast. Seeing a disaster in the making, the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia introduced stringent new laws governing the structure of yachts wanting to race to Hobart. There was international furore, but time has shown the club's attitudes to be correct. In fact, its attitudes towards safety in the sport see it recognised today as a world authority. This is due in part to the Hobart race, unlike other classics, being contested annually. That allows for a yearly review of procedures, making the race a testbed for designers, sailmakers and builders. Race reporting has progressed with the development of computers and satellite communications. Back in the 40s, there was no guide as to a handicap winner until the yachts had reached Hobart. Later, the development of manual calculators allowed for some predictions to be made from position reports. Today, satellites and computers combine to generate these progress reports in minutes. The next step will see each competing yacht carry a satellite transmitter which reveals its position, course and speed at any given moment. Rough races have always been remembered, and one of the roughest came in 1984. A savage southerly buster ambushed the fleet, delivering some of the worst conditions ever experienced. Only 46 of the 152 starters reached Hobart. During one horrible night at sea, veteran Wal Russell was lost overboard from Yahoo 2. Sadly, the race's first fatality. A stunned crewman told of futile bids to rescue 70-year-old Russell.
We were able to bring the boat in alongside where he was, and but he was unconscious and floating face down. We got within about a metre of him, and then we drifted away, and with him being unconscious, we just couldn't get a rope around him or anything.
The Maxi named New Zealand took line honours that year, and after saying that he was surprised more lives weren't lost in such treacherous conditions, skipper Peter Blake went on to explain what it was like sailing a Maxi to windward in that weather.
So if you can imagine sort of driving a big yacht in a lot of wind and climbing up seas that are maybe 25 or 30 feet high, with the odd one coming through at 35 or 40 feet, and the top few feet is breaking like surf on a beach, and you're not quite sure what's on the other side, so you're going up on a real angle, and sometimes in the middle of the night, which is even worse, you can't see anything at all, there's no horizon, no nothing, and suddenly the bow just drops, and so you're dropping 25, 30 feet, so it's like jumping off a three-storey building in a truck and then coming up all standing on the concrete below. Crash, bang, the boat just shudders, and the crew down below are thrown out of their bunks.
The 49th Hobart race in 1993 was, as predicted by meteorologist Roger Badham, the toughest of all.
It could be the worst Sydney Hobart on record. Not so much the strongest of the winds. I mean, they've had 80 knots, I think, and going right back in the dim, distant past. But if you look at the longevity of this southerly, in fact, it could be southerly within the first 12 hours at the start, and it could be southerly right through to when they enter into the Derwent at Hobart.
How right he was. Southerly winds of up to 70 knots and gargantuan breaking seas hammered the fleet. Yachts sank, others were rolled over and broken up. Coastal ports looked like aquatic junkyards as 67 of the 105 starters sought safe haven. Only 38 yachts reached Hobart, and Andrew Strachan's new blue-hulled sloop 97, measuring just 13.3 metres, became the smallest yacht in 40 years to take line honours. That race provided a miracle when the skipper of Mem, John Quinn, was plucked from a storm-ravaged ocean 45 nautical miles offshore after being overboard for 5 hours. Quinn was spotted by a crew member of the ship Ampol Sorel, which was searching in pitch darkness for him. He was then picked up by the team aboard the dismasted and damaged race yacht Atara. Back on shore, Quinn told what happened.
Big wave hit and just broke over the boat, you know, put the boat on the side, and then I went over with the boat and broke the harness. I got a bit desperate towards the end, but because I was beginning to lose body temperature, you know.
Atara crewman Fraser Johnston detailed the rescue.
Well, first we lost one of our guys overboard in the first pass, so we had 2 in the water. We got him back on, and then we went back and got this guy. He was pretty well stuffed, actually. He was finished. He had enough nous to keep yelling, but he was no help to us pulling him on board. Better take him round the stern and pull him in. But he grabbed hold of the rope like a drowning man will. He wouldn't let the rope go.
And what did this marathon swimmer decide to do once back on shore?
We're just going up to the pub and...
Over the 50 years, near 5,000 yachts and 35,000 sailors have been part of the Sydney Hobart Classic. Some race to win, others to simply be part of the crowd. Some are fortunate enough to win first up. For others, like the perennial Sid Fisher, it took time. It was not until his 25th race in 1992 that he saw the famous name of his yacht Ragamuffin go on to the winner's trophy. Why do they do it? And why do they keep coming back for more? The race, the challenge of air and ocean when aboard a small yacht, is infectious. Punishing as it is pleasant, it is on the must-do agenda for just about everyone with salt in their veins. Now it's time to turn the page to the golden anniversary Sydney Hobart as seen through Network 10's race reports.
Soon after sunrise, the overnight developments in the 630 nautical mile classic were revealed. With the wind now coming from astern, the northwest, the line honours favourite, Bob Clifford's maxi-sized ketch Tasmania, was able to cram on all possible sail and regain the ground she lost in the previous 12 hours. Tasmania was literally knifing her way towards the southern horizon and sailing away from the opposition. She was at that stage 200 nautical miles into the race and 36 nautical miles ahead of the record pace set by the American maxi Kialoa 19 years ago. Up ahead, though, a southerly buster would slow her run. The big question was, when would it arrive? George Snow's Sydney-based maxi Brindabella had surrendered the lead overnight. She was still making impressive speed, but needed stronger winds to make any impression on the front runner. The British-owned and Tasmanian-chartered Longabata Mitre 10 was holding down third place and managing to contain Arthur Bleur's fast-running pocket maxi Hammer of Queensland, which in turn led the yacht most fancied to win on handicap, Exile, owned by Warwick Miller and representing Hong Kong. As our cameras reached Anthony Bealby's Epsom broomstick, the complexion of the race was beginning to change. It was time to douse the spinnaker as the wind was moving towards the south. Sure enough, not far away, American Bevan Coppell had his maxi Congieri already belting into the first phase of the southerly buster. And out in front, Tasmania told the complete story. The sleigh ride was over, the spinnakers were down, sail area was reduced, and it was a hard slog to windward for a short time at least.
This was how the front runners were placed at the end of day 2.
A new complexion will come over the Kodak Gold Sydney Hobart Yacht Classic within the next 18 hours when gale force winds sweep across the fleet. The good news is that the wind will come from the west and northwest and drive the leaders at top speed towards a course record. The bad news is the same conditions will hammer the bulk of the fleet with 40-knot gusts and rough seas in Bass Strait and inevitably bring a spate of retirements. So far, there have been very few retirements from the 370 yacht fleet. One of the latest was the Victorian entry Monia Topcat, sailed by Trevor Leasley. She lost her rudder when she struck a whale. Tonight, the Maxis, Tasmania and Brindabella, are locked in a head-to-head battle in mid-Bass Strait in the race for line honours. But on the existing forecast, any one of 6 yachts can be first to Hobart and beat the record time set by Kialoa back in 1975. To break the record and collect the $100,000 bonus being offered by Kodak, the first yacht will need to be in Hobart around 3:45 a.m. on Thursday. For 19 years, Mother Nature has jealously guarded the record time set by the American maxi Kialoa in the Sydney-Hobart race, and today she intervened yet again. The anticipated gale force winds, which were expected to propel the lead yachts towards a new record, and a $100,000 bonus from race sponsors Kodak Gold, did not eventuate until late in the day. On the positions provided to race headquarters in Hobart, and considering the developing weather pattern, the record was safe. The race leader, the maxi Ketch Tasmania, early today ambled down the course at an average speed required to be the fastest yacht ever to cover the 630 nautical miles. But while late today she was still on target for the record, the light weather pattern that lay ahead looked set to cripple her challenge. The most remarkable effort came from the considerably smaller Exile, which at one stage last night actually assumed the lead in this, the 50th anniversary race. The latest report has her just astern of the most modern maxi racing, Brindabella, and maintaining a solid claim for top honours on handicap. Astern of her was Sorcery, Longabata Mitre 10, Epsom Broomstick and Congieri. Handicap positions were uncertain, but among the smaller yachts doing well were Marara, the new sloop Raptor, Exile, Rampant and Heart's Mineral Waters.
A southwesterly front hit the fleet at about 6 o'clock this evening. We on board Young Endeavour had winds of up to 48 knots, although some yachts did experience 60 knots. There's been sail damage to some yachts. Crews have suffered minor cuts and bruises, and it was the boats towards the back of the fleet that had the worst of the conditions. Those in the lee of Flinders Island were a lot luckier. A couple of yachts have had scares with container vessels, but all is okay. They've managed to change course and avoid them. Some yachts are seeking shelter from the storm and hope to continue in the race tomorrow. The yacht Macbeth has retired to Eden with a split mainsail, and Kodak Express, which is heading for shelter at Gable Island, is also okay. One yacht, Auspicious, which was returning to Eden after earlier problems, required assistance from the Coastal Patrol, and they're now safely in Eden Harbour. It appears that there will be a few retired boats after this storm tonight. It's still blowing pretty hard, and it's hard to know when it will abate.
Day 3, and this was the race for line honours. Tasmania had made great speed under Spinnaker and led Brindabella and Exile by a comfortable margin. The bulk of the fleet was still in Bass Strait. The closing stages were as dramatic as any in the Classic. A savage change in wind direction the previous evening provided conditions which did not favour the two-masted Tasmania. The crew could only sail their hardest, watch and hope as George Snow's Sydney Maxi Brindabella began to close in like a lion on the prowl. Also making a move was Warwick Miller's green-hulled pocket Maxi Exile. In the dark hours, Tasmania and Brindabella locked into a head-to-head battle, and at first light, much to everyone's surprise, the well-sailed Tasmania was maintaining the narrowest of leads. As the pair approached the entrance to the Derwent, they were just 200 metres apart. Then a smart tactical move aboard Tasmania and a sail problem on Brindabella combined to give the Hobart yacht the break it needed. And here it is, approaching the finish of the 50th anniversary Sydney-Hobart race, and look at this, we still have a race on our hands. The big maxi catch Tasmania is well and truly into the river, and in the distance there was Brindabella. You can see all the crew of Tasmania on deck there, all very anxious to keep the Sydney Maxi Brindabella behind them, and now the way it's looking, Brindabella will literally have to jump over the top of them to beat them. That's the finishing line at the top of the screen, and Tasmania is making superb speed up here. All sails set, looking very fast, very strong. The crew has put up a magnificent effort overnight to hold out Brindabella, because in reality, conditions for over the last 40 miles from Tasman Island across Storm Bay and up the Derwent River to the finishing line right at the foot of the city of Hobart has certainly favoured the Sydney boat. But great crew work, great tactics here, and we see Tasmania coming in to become the first ever Tasmanian yacht to take line honours in a Sydney-Hobart Classic. Only a matter of metres to go, the line just ahead of them. They'll probably push the boat up through the eye of the wind here and let the sails flap just to absolutely minimise their time taken for the course. Unfortunately, though, they will be outside the course record. They are outside the course record by about 2 hours. So that record that stood from 1975 will last another year. And there it is, coming up through the eye of the wind now. They're almost across the line, just cruising through there. A great scene here, boats everywhere, hundreds of boats out on the river. It's just before 6 a.m. and there it is, Tasmania, the big maxi catch sailed by Bob Clifford, is across the line. The crew starting to relax there. The congratulations will go around now as they start to get the boat ready for dropping the sails. There you see them coming out of the cockpit there, and here come the sails down now, up into the breeze once more. And looks like Graham Freeman going forward there, the sailing master, to congratulate everyone. Bob Clifford, the skipper, will be a very elated man coming into his hometown to a victory, the first ever Tasmanian yacht to take line honours. And now, just 7 minutes away behind Tasmania is Brindabella. Very disappointing moment for them. She looked as though she could catch the big Tasmanian boat and beat them across the line, but that isn't going to be the case this year. George Snow and the boys will have to come back and try once again. Moving very nicely through the water though. This upwind sailing really does suit Brindabella, but she couldn't capitalise on her gains made earlier today on Storm Bay. And there it is now, Brindabella just coming across the line, sun just coming up in Hobart, a big crowd out on the water and starting to gather on the shore to welcome these yachts into Hobart. City in the background now, and all these spectator boats starting to move in around, and while Brindabella gets ready, here is Tasmania coming into the dock. A very tired crew. They've been up all night knowing that they had to fight very, very hard to keep Brindabella out of line honours in this race. The champagne's out already. Bob Clifford doing it all, spraying the crowd. A very happy man, and the party in Hobart today around this yacht and this crew is going to be something to remember. A big day for Hobart all round.
Well, the 2 rigs is obviously the fastest way to Hobart, but it's only by that much.
With line honours decided and the partying underway, the smaller yachts were still racing for a win on handicap. And the overall race winner was the 41-foot German entry Raptor, sailed by Andreas Eichenauer. An Australian-designed and built boat launched just 5 days before the race. This had been the greatest gathering of ocean racing yachts the world had seen, with more than 300 reaching the finish. With that, the Kodak Gold 50th anniversary Sydney-Hobart race was complete.
The first real long-distance event, the Australasian debut of ocean racing, may be said to have been the race which has just been concluded, the Sydney to Hobart event, and the event which I had the privilege of winning in my small cutter, the Rhino. It's a contest requiring a certain amount of skill and very considerable endurance. It is, in fact, what the popular press would call a thoroughly sporting event. Ocean racing brings together yachtsmen of different countries. Australian yachtsmen, the ball is at your feet. You have the enthusiasm, the courses, and the yachts. And I look forward to the future of ocean racing in Australia with every confidence.